Hey smart buddies, let's get back to school and know more with the smart slate. Today we'll know more about the verb. As you can see, the picture of tree which is showing you different types of verbs or different kinds of verbs. So here we'll know more about irregular verbs, non-finite verbs, linking verbs, action verbs, auxiliary verbs, finite verbs, modal verbs, regular verbs, gerund and infinitive. So today we'll understand difference between all these terms and what are these actually. Why are we identifying or classifying the verb in these categories? So first we'll understand meaning of a verb. It is a word that denotes an action. Like you can see different emojis. What are these? These are verbs. Smiling, laughing, but they can be used as an adjective also. So there is a difference between a verb and an adjective. How you use them? Like here in the picture, if I see, I can understand that these girls are dancing. So what action I can confirm is dancing. I can label this picture as two men are fighting or two boys are fighting. These kids are jumping or boys are jumping or chefs are serving food. So you're serving, dancing, fighting, jumping. So serve, dance, fight, jump. All these are verbs because these words denote an action. In the similar way, you have to label these pictures in the comment section. What type of verb would you like to label to these pictures? What you can see and understand. Here are a few more pictures for you all. So label the verbs in the comment section. Now we'll come to the main point, that is the verb. We have understood the basic idea about verb. Now the verbs are classified into different categories. But before beginning, first let us look at few sentences to understand verb. You should complete the homework. Now if you have referred to the video of parts of speech, you must have understood now that you is pronoun, should complete is your verb, and the homework is again noun. So we can, uh, you can say we can uh, split the sentence into noun, verb, adjective, or we can just identify parts of speech in a sentence. So should complete is the verb. They are playing. Are playing is the verb. Mom will cook the food. Will cook is the verb. Jaden plays piano. Plays is your verb. She's dancing. Is dancing is the verb. So in all these sentences, what you can understand is should complete, are playing, will cook, plays, and is dancing are the verbs. But action verb is complete, play, cook, dance. Should, are, will, does, is are all different verbs, and complete, play, cook, play, dance are action verbs. So what are these verbs? Should, are, will, does, is. What are these? Let us understand. So first we'll understand these section of verbs. So this section of verb. So these verbs can, could, must, should, had, better, have to, need, and dare. What are these? These are modal verbs. Modal verbs are the verbs which are used to indicate modality. That means whenever you indicate likelihood or possibility of something, an order, request, suggestion, obligation, advice, capacity, or permission, then you use modal verbs and not action verbs. Action verbs are accompanying modal verbs. Any of the verbs must, in order to complete a sentence, modal verbs are necessary, and other verbs accompany modal verbs. Usually we have gerunds and infinitives. A modal auxiliary verb gives information about the function of the main verb that it governs. That means if I say I can perform well, so here can is the modal auxiliary verb which is giving the information of the main verb. Main verb is perform. What can I do? I can perform well. So perform is the main verb. But Can is the modal verb which shows the possibility that yes, there are chances, there is possibility that you can go good or go bad. So modal verbs usually accompany the base form, that is an infinitive form of any other verb having the same relationship with the content, that is semantic content. We'll understand it with the help of an example. So here I have few examples. We shall join you soon. Join is the main verb, but shall is your modal verb. Barbie needs a hairdresser. Doraemon would love the Tora cake surprise. Kids must eat vegetables. Shinchan will come tomorrow. Nobita can do it. You may leave now. Shall, needs, would, must, will, can, may are modal verbs. And the main verbs you can understand here are join, love, eat, come, do, leave. So I hope you understood modal verbs. Moving to the second type we'll know about is auxiliary verbs. So these are the verbs that adds functional or grammatical meaning to the clause in which it occurs so as to express tense, aspect, modality, voice or emphasis. Now are modal verbs and auxiliary verbs the same? No. Even though they both express modality, but they are different. These are helper verbs or helping verbs or auxiliaries, verbal auxiliaries. These are not modal verbs. Modal verb is an auxiliary verb, but auxiliary verb is not a modal verb. So we say modal auxiliary verbs. Usually it accompanies an infinitive verb or a participle. Like I am having something. So having something. Am is your modal, you can say, am is an auxiliary and having ing when you add, it is a participle. Or I am eating, or she has been doing something. So your such verbs are auxiliary verbs when you accompany them with the participle. Like we have example of auxiliary verbs in the to be form. Am, is, are, was, were, being, been, will be. In the have form we have has, have, had, having and will have. In the do form we have do, does, did and will do. So these are the auxiliary verbs. We'll understand them with the help of examples. Mickey had the comic book. Had. Looney Tunes will be the next show. Will be. Tom was present there. Was. Barbie is the most beautiful doll. Is. I am good. Am. Tweety loves being pampered by Nanny. Loves. Powerpuff calls to play the guitar. Play. But here do is your auxiliary verb. Popo and Flintstone are my favorite tune shows. Are. So these are auxiliary verbs. They usually accompany the different verbs, like they have either participle or infinitive verbs along with them. Now we'll understand the difference between modal auxiliaries and auxiliary verb. So modal verbs are auxiliary verbs as they are not subject to inflections, but auxiliary verbs are subject to inflections. So this is the basic difference. Modals are not subject to inflections, but auxiliary are. Inflection is nothing but change in, you can say, mood, tone, or the verb pattern when you write them. So modal verbs are not subject to that, but auxiliary verbs are subjected to it. So modal verbs are subject to inflections, whereas auxiliary are not subject to inflections. So we'll understand them looking at the picture. You can see can, may, will, shall, must, ought to, could, might, should, would, need. These are modal verbs, whereas auxiliary verbs is subject to inflections. That means you have added is, id, or will to the verb do. Then we have have form, ing, d, s, or will have. So having, had, has, will have come from a word have. So you have inflected the word have and made it into 4 new verbs. Similarly, we have be form, been, being, will be, is, am, are, was, were. So these are subject to inflections, whereas modal verbs are not. Coming to the second type, a third type, that is, a verb whose conjugation follows the typical pattern or one of the typical patterns of the language to which it belongs is a regular verb. But if it does not follow the typical pattern of conjugation, then it is an irregular verb. We'll understand it with the help of an example. So what is the difference between regular and irregular verbs? Regular verbs have the base form plus typical endings d, ed or ied. But in case of irregular verbs, they are not made according to the typical pattern. Like here, we have the columns like types, present and past participle tenses. So here, type 1 is adding ed to the base form. Add, added and added. Now we'll add d to the base form. Hope is your present tense, hoped is your past tense, and again hoped is your past participle. Now we'll add ied. Cry, cried and cried. So what we can understand is past and past participle tenses are same here in case of spelling or inflection you can say, or you have to just add edd or ied to the present tense and the tenses are formed. But it is not in case of irregular verb. Like the very first type here is when, one, one. Second type is write, wrote, written. The spelling is changed. Cut, cut and cut. Spelling is same. Fourth type is come, came and come. So what can we conclude? That is, in the regular verbs, ed, ed. Same pattern, adding ed to the base form, so it is a regular verb. Adding d to the base form, it is a regular verb. Adding ied to the base form, it is a regular verb. So they have typical endings. But in case of irregular verbs, the first type, past and past participle are same. That means both the spellings are same. But in the third case, cut, cut and cut, all three are same. And in the second case, the spellings are completely different, like write, wrote and written. In the fourth case, present tense and past participle are same, come and come, whereas past tense spelling is different. So here we have four types of irregular verbs and they do not follow the typical pattern of making verbs in different tenses. Whereas regular verbs, they have typical endings. So these are regular verbs and these are irregular verbs. Now we'll understand action verbs. Action verbs are the easiest of all because it is a word that describes your action like hop, run, cook, dance, jump, kick, eat, break, cry, smile, think. Here in the picture you can guess the verb. So here we can see that a girl is jumping. So jump is your action verb. Children are running. Run is your action verb. A kid is weeping. Cry is your action verb. So action verbs are quite easy. The second type we'll understand here is a verb that links the subject of the sentence to information about that subject. Now here in this particular type, I think this is we have completed with modals, auxiliaries, regular, irregular. So this is the fifth type I think. So in this type we'll understand the linkage of the subject to the information about the subject. So when you try to link the information about the subject to the subject, this verb is known as a linking verb because it is linking the subject to the information about the subject. Linking verbs usually have two things like state of being and action. They will describe two things, state of being and action. Like what can you understand in this picture? Tom looks scared and Tom looks at the coast. So here what I can understand is the subject is Tom, scared is the state of being. Again Tom is the subject, but he's looking at something, looking at the ghost is the action. So looks here is linking verb, which is showing the state of being as well as an action. Similar example we can see Tom is a cat, the state of being, whereas cat kills mouse, or Tom kills mouse, or Tom kills Jerry. So this is the action. He was a teacher. He taught grammar. So here he's the subject, and he was a teacher. It's a state of being. Yes, at the time he was a teacher, and he taught grammar is the action which took place in the past. So was and thought here are the linking verbs, linking the subject he to the information about it, that is teacher or teaching grammar. That is grammar is the information and thought is the linking verb. So linking verbs are quite easy, but not all verbs are linking verbs because they do not show you either stage or either any information. They are just used to write general sentences like farmer grows wheat, sun rises in the east, general information, or dog lives in a kennel, Maria disappeared. Here there is no information, neither any state of being. These are general, uh, you can say sentences which provide you general information, but there is no linkage of subject to the information of the subject. So these are the linking verbs. Now the next type is finite verbs. Finite verbs function as verb. There is a change in the number of person, tense, number, that is singular or plural, and form. And the verb also changes with the change in the person, tense, or number or form. Then these are finite verbs. Like here, I live in Mexico. He lives in Mexico. So here, the verb changes with the change in the subject, that is I and he, live and lives. So here, tense and number are also there. We'll understand tense first. Arav bakes the cake. Arav baked the cake. So here, in case of changing the time, bakes and baked, the verb got changed. A laptop is an expensive gadget, and laptops are expensive gadget. Change in the number. A laptop, many laptops. So the verb got changed is to are. So these verbs have limited usage. So these are known as finite verbs. Like live, changed to lives, bakes, baked. In case of number, is and are. So these are finite verbs. Non-finite verbs usually function as noun, adverb, or an adjective. So types of non-finite verbs you can see are gerund, infinitives, and participles. These verbs do not change with the change in the number of person, tense, or you can say subject. So here, my hobby is cooking. Cooking was my hobby. If I change the subject and object, but the verb, non-finite verb, cooking, which is noun, remains the same. Even if you can see here, the my hobby is the subject which is changed, and here is also changed to was. So even when you change the tense, the non-finite verb, that is cooking, is still the same. Cooking here acts as noun. In case of adverb, we shall come soon. To come soon was its priority. So here we and shall, that is time and subject, both are changed. We has changed to his. That means here there were a number of persons, and here there's a single person. So we changed to his, and even the time got changed, like future to past. But still soon remains the same. So soon acts as adverb, that means a non-finite verb. Jenny was amazing in her act, and that amazing kid stands next to her. So here, amazing is seen in both the sentences. Even if you change the sentence, amazing works as an adjective, or you can say a non-finite verbs in both the sentences. So, and when you change number, tense, or person, but the verb does not change, then such verbs are non-finite verbs. We'll understand the difference between finite and non-finite verbs. Non-finite verbs are not a single verb. They are not main verbs but action verbs which remain same. There is no agreement with the subject. These are secondary verbs. Whereas finite verbs are a single verb. They are also known as main verbs or action verbs, which modifies the form of a sentence because when you change the number, person or tense, the sentence gets modified. You change the tenses here. There is an agreement with the subject. These are primary verbs, and non-finite verbs are not indicator verbs of tense. That means they are not showing you the tense of a sentence, whereas finite verbs show you the tense of a sentence as well. So these are primary verbs, whereas non-finite verbs are secondary verbs. That means in a sentence there are finite plus non-finite verbs used together at times. Like you can say, I like cooking, I liked cooking. Like is the finite verb, whereas cooking is the non-finite verb. Now we'll understand gerund. Gerund is nothing but verb plus ing. So here, my passion was cooking and cooking is my passion. To the word cook, I have added ing. But when I change the tense, the non-finite verb cooking still remains same. So gerund are usually non-finite verbs. When you change the tense, cooking remains same. That means it is acting like a noun. So it is a gerund and non-finite verb. Participle. In case of present participle and past participle, we have two participles. So here, Sam is writing a book and students are writing the exam. I have changed the subject Sam to students, but writing is still the same. When you change the number of persons or subject, the verb gets changed, that is and are. So is and are the finite verbs, but writing is the present participle and it remains the same. Present participles is the verb when you add verb plus ing. So writing is your non-finite verb. Similarly, Sam has written a book. Students have written the exam. So here it is the past tense whenever you add have or has to the verb, that is V3, written and written. So it is your past participle. So again, with the change in the subject, the verb still remains same, written and written. Has and have got changed. So here participles are again non-finite verbs. Like Sam and students, you have changed the number of persons. Is and are, has and have, these are the tenses which got changed. So these are finite verbs. But writing and written remain same. So it is the participle, that is non-finite verb. If the tense got changed, like is and was, again it is a finite verb, not an infinite verb, but writing remains same in both the cases. Present when you change the subject, and written remains same when you change the subject or the number of persons, you can see. So written and writing are the participles which are non-finite verbs. The last type is infinitive. Verb plus 2 plus verb is your infinitive. I love to cook food for the family. They love to cook food for the family. So here, love and loved, these are finite verbs because the subject got changed, like the number of persons, I and they. But the verb to cook and to cook, they remain same. So to cook is the non-finite verb and to plus verb is your infinitive as well. So here love and loved are finite verbs, but to cook is your non-finite verb. Now we'll understand the difference between gerund and participle. Gerund Both these gerund and participle have ing at the end, but gerund acts as a noun and participle acts as a verb. This is the basic difference. Hopefully you understood all these types of verbs and the difference between gerund and participle. Here's time for you all to practice, identify verbs and answer them in the comment section. Thank you, keep learning, keep growing, and stay tuned for more such videos.